Silverware and the hum of brunch chatter filled the restaurant, but my mother's words sliced through it all like a knife. "She's only invited because I felt sorry for her," Mom said loudly enough for the whole table to hear. Her voice was coated with venom, a smirk tugging at her lips as she reached for her mimosa. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us, where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation. Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. The table went silent. My sister laughed under her breath, whispering something to her fiancé as though the humiliation of her own blood was entertainment. My father shifted uncomfortably, but not once did he defend me. I set my cup of tea down gently, my hands steady, even though my heart felt like it was being crushed in front of everyone. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. Instead, I sipped again, the porcelain rim cool against my lips, masking the burn in my chest. Inside, though, a storm raged. I had been through enough of her cruel remarks over the years, comments about me being the disappointment, the failure, the charity case of the family. And here she was, putting it on display in front of relatives and strangers alike. "So quiet," my aunt murmured across the table, her eyes flitting toward me with a mix of pity and curiosity. "You never fight back, do you?" I met her gaze. My voice came out calm but sharp. Some people let their actions speak louder than words. For a brief moment, silence wrapped the table. My mother scoffed, tossing her napkin onto her lap. "Actions? Please, what actions? You live off scraps. Don't embarrass yourself." Her cruelty wasn't shocking anymore. What shocked them all was how I didn't flinch. I wasn't the girl. They thought they could break, and then, an hour later, the air in the restaurant shifted. The door opened, and every head turned when a tall man in a tailored navy suit walked in. His presence carried weight, the kind that silenced chatter and drew attention without effort. His dark hair was neatly styled, his step steady, and his gaze unwavering as it scanned the room until it landed on me. My heart raced, not with fear, but with a satisfaction I had been holding on to all morning. "Emma," he said as he approached, his voice deep, steady, commanding. Mom froze. Her fork slipped from her hand and clattered against the plate, echoing across the table. Her face paled as if she had seen a ghost, because standing there was my husband, Daniel Lawson, the man she never believed existed. The man she thought I had made up when I refused to share details about my private life. But now, here he was in flesh and blood, more powerful, more commanding, and more devastatingly real than anyone at that table could have imagined. And for the first time in years, my mother had nothing to say. The restaurant seemed to stop breathing. Forks hovered midair, conversations stalled. Even the waiters hesitated in their steps as Daniel pulled out the empty chair beside me and sat down. His hand brushed mine briefly, calm, steady, protective. That single gesture was enough to silence every cruel whisper I'd endured at this table. "Sorry I'm late," Daniel said smoothly, flashing a polite smile at the relatives who had been gawking. Traffic was brutal. His tone was casual, but the weight of his presence pressed on everyone like a thundercloud about to break. My mother's lips parted, but nothing came out. She blinked as if she was trying to convince herself this was real. You're her husband?" Her voice cracked, and for once, the sharp edge she always used on me dulled into disbelief. Daniel tilted his head slightly, his jaw tightening. "Yes. And who are you exactly?" Her mouth opened and closed, a fish gasping for air. I'm her mother." He leaned back, eyes narrowing, and in that moment, the table understood. He wasn't just anyone. His confidence, his control, his very existence radiated power. People like him didn't wait to be introduced. They commanded the room without asking permission. My sister Amber was the first to break the tension with a scoff. This can't be real. Emma? Married? To you? She laughed as though the idea itself was a cruel joke. I mean, come on, look at her. She can barely afford her rent. The words stung, but I didn't let them see. Daniel's hand tightened. Over mine before I could speak. Funny, Daniel said, his voice deceptively calm. From where I stand, she's the strongest, most capable woman I've ever known. Maybe that's why she doesn't waste her time trying to tear other people down. Amber's smile faltered. Her fiancé shifted uncomfortably beside her. I could feel eyes burning into me from every angle. Relatives who once ignored me, cousins who whispered about my failures, all staring now, wondering how they had missed the truth. Mom finally snapped out of her daze. Wait, she said sharply, her voice trembling between outrage and desperation. If you're really her husband, then who are you? Daniel pulled his wallet from his suit jacket, placing a sleek, embossed business card on the table. The golden lettering gleamed under the light. Silence deepened as my aunt leaned forward, squinting at the name. Her eyes widened instantly. Daniel Lawson, CEO of Lawson Global Holdings? The shock that followed was a wave crashing through the table. My uncle coughed into his napkin. My cousin's jaw dropped. My sister's fiancé muttered a curse under his breath. But my mother, she went pale. Completely pale. Her fork lay forgotten on her plate, her manicured nails twitching as she reached for her glass of water. You've been mocking your own daughter, Daniel said, his tone sharp now, while she has quietly stood taller than every insult you've thrown her way, and yet you didn't even notice. The way he said it wasn't angry. It was worse. It was controlled. Cold. Each word carved deep into the silence like a blade. I sat there, still and quiet, but my heart pounded. For years I had dreamed of this moment, not revenge exactly, but justice. Proof. A mirror held up to the people who had spent their lives humiliating me. Amber laughed again, but her voice cracked this time. This is ridiculous. You're lying. Emma can't. She wouldn't. Daniel turned to her, his eyes narrowing. Do you think she's beneath me? That a woman has to prove herself to you before she's worthy of love? Maybe you should ask yourself why you're so quick to sneer at someone who's done nothing but endure your cruelty with grace. Amber flushed red, her mouth snapping shut. For once, she had no clever insult. My mother finally found her voice. Again, but it shook. Emma, why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell us? I let out a slow breath. My voice, calm and steady, filled the table. Because every time I tried to share a piece of my life, you turned it into ammunition. You never wanted to hear the truth. You wanted to hear something you could use against me. So I learned to keep my silence. Silence was safer. Her eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen before. Not remorse. Fear. Daniel's gaze swept across the table. She doesn't need your approval. She doesn't need your validation. And she certainly doesn't need your pity. She has everything she needs right here. He lifted my hand, pressing his lips to my knuckles, a subtle but undeniable declaration. The room around us was tense, every relative frozen between disbelief and awe. But I wasn't looking at them anymore. I was looking at my mother, watching, her mask finally crack. For years she had lived off superiority, reminding me at every turn that I wasn't enough. But now? She looked small, shaken, cornered by the truth she couldn't laugh away. And I sat there sipping my tea again. The taste, sharper now, sweeter even. Because for the first time in my life, her silence belonged to me. My mother's fingers trembled as she set her glass down, the faint clink louder than the chatter that had started to return around the restaurant. But at our table, no one dared to breathe too deeply. The air was heavy with everything left unsaid. I don't understand. Mom whispered, her eyes darting between me and Daniel as if searching for a loophole, an escape. You've been hiding this from us? Why? Her voice wasn't soft from love. It was laced with fear, the kind that only comes when someone realizes the power has slipped out of their hands. I tilted my head, keeping my tone calm. Hiding? No. I just stopped offering pieces of myself to people who never cared to listen. My aunt shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her gaze flickering between us. Marilyn, she said quietly, addressing my mom, you've been harsh. Maybe it's time you admitted that. Harsh. The word hung in the air like a cheap substitute for years of cruelty. Harsh? I finally said, laughing without humor. You call it harsh when your own mother tells you, in front of strangers, that you're nothing? When she invites you only to humiliate you? I looked straight at Mom. That's not harsh. That's deliberate. That's cruelty dressed up. As family. Daniel squeezed my hand, but I didn't need reassurance anymore. I was standing on ground I'd built myself. Amber broke in, her voice sharp. Oh, give me a break, Emma. You always play the victim. Maybe if you'd actually done something with your life, Mom wouldn't have to feel ashamed. The words hit, but they didn't wound. Not like they used to. Instead, I leaned forward, my eyes locking with hers. Ashamed of me? Or jealous? Of the fact that I didn't beg for scraps of approval the way you still do? Her cheeks flushed. She opened her mouth to argue, but Daniel's voice cut through, low and steady. Careful, he warned, his tone sending shivers across the table. You have no idea the kind of strength it takes to endure what she has. Amber's fiancé shifted in his seat, his hand tugging at his collar. He looked ready to disappear. But my mother still wasn't done. Her pride wouldn't let her sit silent for long. You think bringing a man here makes you superior, Emma? That we'll suddenly treat you differently because of his money? Her words were sharp, desperate claws clinging to the last shreds of control. I met her glare with quiet certainty. No, Mom, I don't want your approval. Not anymore. This isn't about money. This is about respect. Something you never gave. Me, no matter how hard I tried to earn it. Her face twisted, the cracks in her mask spreading wider. For the first time in my life, she looked unsettled. Vulnerable. Daniel leaned forward, his gaze pinned on her. You've spent years underestimating her. But here's what you never realized. Emma doesn't need your pity, and she never did. The truth is, she's stronger than this entire table combined. The silence that followed was suffocating. Amber tried again, her voice shrill now. This is absurd. You're just trying to make us look bad. I turned to her, my tone soft, but edged with steel. You don't need my help for that. You've done a great job all on your own. Laughter rippled from a distant table. Someone overhearing, though not understanding. But it cut through the tension, a reminder that the world outside this drama still spun while my family's empire of cruelty was crumbling piece by piece. My father finally spoke, his voice low, weary. Enough. His eyes were on me, but they carried none of the venom my mother's did. Emma, I didn't realize... No. I cut him off, my voice steady. You realized. You just stayed silent, and silence can be just as cruel as... The words she throws at me. His face hardened, shame flickering but quickly buried. I looked at them all. The family who had laughed at me, mocked me, turned every gathering into a stage for my humiliation. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. Daniel's arm brushed against mine as he leaned back. I think we're done here, he said. His tone wasn't angry. It was final. But before he could rise, my mother blurted out, her voice cracking. Wait. The single word pulled every gaze back to her. She sat frozen, her hand gripping the edge of the table. Her lips trembled, and for a moment, she looked old, fragile. Emma, she whispered, I didn't mean. I lifted my hand, stopping her. Don't rewrite the story now. You meant every word. The only difference is today, you finally saw that your words don't have power over me anymore. The weight of the moment pressed against my chest, but it wasn't crushing. It was freeing. Daniel stood, pulling me gently with him. His presence was like a shield, but I didn't need shielding anymore. Not here, not now. I looked back last time, my voice clear. I came here today to drink tea, not to beg for love. And I'm leaving with exactly what I need. The room seemed to exhale as we walked away, their stunned silence following me like a shadow. But for once, it wasn't. My burden to carry, it was theirs. And as we stepped out into the sunlight, Daniel's hand warm in mine, I realized something I'd waited my whole life to feel. Freedom wasn't about running away. It was about standing tall, even when the world tried to push you down. The sunlight outside felt different, warmer, brighter, like the air itself was lighter without the weight of that table pressing on me. But I knew it wasn't over. Families like mine never let things end cleanly. Sure enough, my phone buzzed before we even reached the car. Amber's name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. Moments later, another buzz, Mom this time. Then Dad. Call after call, one after another, as if they were scrambling to patch the cracks in the image they had so carefully curated. Daniel glanced at the phone in my hand, then at me. You don't owe them a response, he said quietly. I swallowed, hard, my chest tight. I know, but I want them to hear me, one last time. So I answered, Emma. Mom's voice came through, high-pitched, frantic. Please don't leave things like this. We just didn't know. You didn't want to know, I cut in, my voice steady but sharp. You never asked. You never listened. Every time I tried to share, you turned it into a weapon, and now you're scared, not sorry. Her silence on the other end was deafening. Amber's voice broke in, shrill. You're blowing this out of proportion. You embarrassed us in there. Do you realize how you made us look? I laughed softly, the sound bitter but free. Funny. You spent years humiliating me in front of anyone who would listen, but the moment the truth makes you uncomfortable, suddenly I'm the villain? Daniel reached over, placing his hand gently on my knee. A silent reminder. I had already won. Emma. Mom's voice trembled now, desperation seeping through. We can start over. Come home. Bring him. We'll talk as a family. No, I said firmly. You don't get to call this family when all you ever gave me was shame. I have a family now, one that doesn't need your approval to exist. The line went silent. Then, softly, I added, You'll never use me as your scapegoat again. And I hung up. For the first time in my life, the click of that call ending didn't fill me with guilt. It filled me with peace. We drove in silence for a while, the city rolling past outside the windows. Then Daniel reached for my hand, his thumb, brushing across my skin. You didn't just stand up to them, he said. You freed yourself. His words settled into me like truth I had always known but never claimed. That evening, as we sat on our balcony overlooking the skyline, my phone lit up again. Texts this time. From cousins, from relatives. Some apologizing, some curious, some suddenly wanting to catch up. But I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I looked at Daniel. For once, I whispered, I don't feel small anymore. He smiled, pulling me close. That's because you never were. You just finally see it. The city lights glimmered below, but they couldn't match the glow that came from inside me. My mother's fork hitting that plate, her face paling at the sight of Daniel, Amber's silence when confronted, those weren't just moments of revenge. They were reminders that no matter how many years they tried to crush me, I had risen higher. And the best part? I hadn't needed to scream, beg, or fight for it. All I had to do was stand in my truth, finally and completely. That night, I muted every chat, silenced every call, and for the first time in years, I slept peacefully because my